Today, we're diving deep into an analysis of Iran, a nation that looks to be at a critical tipping point. We're going to break down how a catastrophic economic collapse is fueling a massive, and some say unprecedented, wave of public defiance. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's kick things off with just one number that tells you almost the whole story. 1.45 million. Now, that's not a lottery jackpot. That's how many Iranian rials it now takes to buy a single US dollar. That one figure is really the heart of the economic freefall that's gripping the country.
So you hear that number, and you start to understand, right? You get a sense of why people are willing to risk everything to take to the streets. To really grasp what's happening, we need to look at the sheer scale of this economic collapse, and it is staggering.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It says it all. Back in 1978, before the revolution, it took about 70 rials to get one US dollar. 70. Fast forward to today, and it's over 1.45 million. The value of their currency has been, well, it's been virtually wiped out. And this isn't some abstract currency game. This is hitting people right where it hurts, at home. The source points out this devastating cost of living crisis. General inflation is already sky high at 48%, but look at food prices, up an insane 56%. We're talking about the basics, just putting food on the table, becoming incredibly difficult for ordinary people. And this quote, wow, this really brings it home. According to this analysis, the average worker in Iran makes the equivalent of about 110 US dollars a month. 110. For a full month of work, your salary is worth less than a single gram of gold. Just let that sink in for a second. So, you've got this economic meltdown, people are struggling. So what's the regime doing? Well, according to the source we're examining, they're panicking deeply. And there's some pretty compelling evidence to back that up. And that evidence comes in the form of a leaked secret letter. Yeah, you heard that right. This document, reportedly from Iran's own central bank, is being pointed to as a clear sign of just how terrified the government is of losing its grip. So what's in this letter? Well, it allegedly orders all the major banks to go into full-on red alert emergency mode. And listen, this isn't your standard fire drill. This is a directive to prepare for actual catastrophes, cyber attacks, citywide blackouts, and even a total loss of government control. They were told to secure everything, get backup systems online, and find a way to keep money flowing even if the state itself collapses. The interpretation from the source here is absolutely key. The government isn't just planning for more protests. They're preparing for a complete and total societal breakdown. When you're telling your banks to get ready for the lights to go out everywhere, you're planning for something way beyond a riot. So while you have the government in full-blown panic mode, the source argues that the Iranian people are responding in the exact opposite way, with a new, unprecedented level of courage and outright defiance. And you can see this shift just in the slogans people are chanting. For decades, the official, state-sanctioned anger was always pointed outward, right? Death upon America, death upon Israel. But now, the chants on the street are aimed right at the top, death upon Khamenei. The target isn't foreign anymore, it's internal. The analysis really emphasizes that for what feels like the first time, the fear is gone. People are doing things like actively tearing down the government's surveillance cameras in the streets. I mean, that's not just a protest. That's a direct physical challenge to the state's power to watch and control them. Now, of course, a crisis this big doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's sending ripples all across the world stage. And the source details exactly how some of the major global powers are reacting to all this chaos. First up, the source points to this message from former U.S. President Donald Trump, which he posted on his platform, Truth Social. It's a pretty direct statement, framed as both an offer of support for the protesters and, well, a clear warning to the Iranian regime. Now, what about Russia? According to this analysis, they are in a very tough spot. They've come to rely heavily on Iranian-made drones for their military campaigns. But with all this unrest, that critical drone production is slowing down, and that is a massive headache for Moscow. China, on the other hand, is apparently looking at this completely differently. The source claims they see this as a huge business opportunity. With Iran isolated and desperate for cash, China can reportedly swoop in and buy oil at rock-bottom prices. So they really have no incentive to help stabilize the situation. In fact, they benefit from Iran's desperation. Meanwhile, what's the current U.S. administration's stance? Well, a senior U.S. official cited in the source says the policy is to avoid direct intervention. No boots on the ground. The belief seems to be that the regime is so fragile it might just topple on its own from the inside out. So all of this leads to the absolute million-dollar question, doesn't it? If the regime actually falls, what comes next? Or maybe, more importantly, who comes next? It's a hugely complex problem that the source dives into. One name that keeps popping up is Reza Pahlavi. He's the son of the last Shah of Iran, who was overthrown back in '79. He's been out there publicly saying he has a plan for a stable transition, basically positioning himself as a leader in waiting. However, this analysis raises some pretty sharp questions about him. It asks why there's no record of him meeting with key world leaders, suggesting he seems hesitant, maybe that he doesn't really want the enormous job of leading. The source argues that this critical moment demands a proactive, not a reactive approach. Ultimately, the source concludes that it's less about finding one specific person and more about finding a certain type of leader, someone who understands diplomacy, someone who isn't screaming inflammatory slogans, and someone whose main goal is just peace and prosperity for the Iranian people. And this really leaves us with the central question. A regime change might be coming. It might even feel imminent. But the much, much harder challenge is what comes after. Toppling a government is one thing. Building a stable, free, and prosperous nation from the ashes, well, that's the great unknown. And that is the challenge that lies ahead.